Hello, everybody. My name is KirkpattieCake. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer. And today we're going to be doing, what is generic? What is peer pressure? Does it count as peer pressure? We're going to be talking about 2024 in review, as well as some of the favorite things that happened this year, some notable things that happened this year, kind of catalog a diary of a little bit of the things that went on this year that are enough for me to remember right now. I'm going to recommend a couple of books. I'm going to anti-recommend a couple of books. I'm going to share some of my art progress since having started working on learning how to draw at the end of 2022 and at where I've come since then. And if you want to see all of the things that I drew this year, I posted a video on Wednesday, yesterday, that shows most of what I've drawn, at least what didn't end up in the garbage specifically. And then I'm going to talk about like my projects next year, what to expect for recommending your books in the future if you want your book to be read here on the channel, kind of like I do with my normal book reviews. So we're going to get into all of this stuff. And I'm going to list some of the first books that I'm going to read this year. I don't know all of them because I am kind of a mood reader. I like have a stack of them and then I kind of just pick based on that, other than a couple that I'm like, I need to read that or I really want to read that. But so we're going to do all of that. However, before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Perhaps consider becoming a member if you'd like to find other ways to support what I do here. The second thing is, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. The number one way to be featured is through Leigh, the monthly prompt writing contest, where I give you a prompt, you write a short story using that prompt, and on the first Monday of the month, we bask in your creative prowess. The second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out. If you submit the first chapter and the cover, that chapter will be read here on the channel to hopefully help more readers find your work. I might be your reader. They might be your reader. There are readers abound. We are all looking for stories, and there are contemporary artists telling amazing things right now. I believe in a lot of people. I anti-believe in a lot of people, but I'm going to keep them to myself for now. The third thing is, if you would like to check out any of my books, they're available at any of your favorite places to get books, including the local library upon request. My newest novel, Bodymore Zero, came out in October. And if you want to keep an eye on what is coming next, well, hang around, follow the bookstores. Anyway, with that said, let's get into it. So this year I read somewhere over 50 books. It's over 30 of them were indie books and 24 of them were traditionally published books. I've already talked about the books so much, so I'm just going to give you the title, the author, the genre, and where it falls on the spectrum of recommended to anti-recommended until we get to the non-recommended, because then I might have something to say. I do have something to say because there's a book on there somebody needs to be punished for. Probably, I'd say the author, but the author might enjoy it. So on the books that I recommend this year, that I've read this year, My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, which is literary fiction. We Need to Talk About Kevin by Lionel Shriver, also literary fiction. The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turin. That is a mystery thriller fantasy kind of thing. Oh, it was good. The ending was great. I especially, and it's hard to pull together what that author was doing, and he pulled it together in the end. Highly recommend. So recommended that I have his 2 other books on my reading list for next year that I am looking forward to, hoping to get to them in February specifically. It depends on how my other books lay out. Transforming Trauma, A Guide to Understanding and Treating Adult Survivors of Child Sexual Abuse by Anna Salter. That was recommended by one of you guys. Highly recommend reading it for the perspective and the information, even if the data is older. The Woman They Could Not Silence, One Woman, Her Incredible Fight for Freedom, and the Men Who Tried to Make Her Disappear by Kate Moore. Highly recommended. That is also nonfiction. And then Not Drunk Enough by Tess Stone. That is a comic. I don't want to say sci-fi, but it does have to do with lab experiments. I like the cast. I like the art. It's great. Other recommendations that were not necessarily my favorite, but I want them to find more readers because I see a lot of value in them. Order of the Spirits Initiation by Vladimir Radojokovic. I'm sorry. I butcher that name every time. I'm sorry, Vladimir. That is a YA fantasy action adventure story. That is the second in the series, and it's going to be a longer series. And I think that the author has said before that he is going to be going back and forth between like an anthology of short stories and then more linear, and then anthology and then linear, but it's all contained within the same story. I haven't read the first book because we started with Initiation specifically because it was a more linear story, and he suggested to read that one first. Bringer of Light by Frank W. Janis. That is a sci-fi novel, heavily on the sci-fi, with a lot of stuff about AI and how to become your own god, specifically. The Dark Violinist by Lauren Chambers. That is obviously a horror. Between reading the beginning of The Dark Violinist and then The Dark Scientist, I want to say that Lauren Chambers is very, very good at specifically openings, because both of the openings that I have read from her so far have captured my attention and made me want to read more. And then Incel by Arkt Han. Now, that is not an easy book to read because the character is so obnoxious, and majority of the book is in his head with him being a douchebag, but but surprisingly enough, for the type of story that it is, the character does actually go through an arc. I would call it satire, it's literary fiction as well, and I think that it has valuable experience presented in a story that is not often expressed. Yeah. Now, books that I would not recommend. This is my anti-recommend, and maybe you'll take that as your turn to recommend, to consume them. Which, do what you want to do. But based on, I like to think that my words mean something, at least from how honest I am. I'm not going to try to lead you astray. I promise. A Court of Sugar and Spice by Rebecca F. Kenny. That is an erotica placed in the setting, the vague setting of the Nutcracker, with the Sugar Plum Prince and the, I don't know, the king who turns into a dragon. Orgies, nonstop sex, consensual, non-consensual. There is, I would say, rape apologism in there because of the way that Louisa treats the man of her interest and keeps pushing it when he says no, and doesn't respect it when he says no, and it's considered fine for her to keep pushing it when he says no and to touch him without his permission. But I don't recommend it. And the author of that also watches social media and responds to social media. Iron Flame and Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Those are the first two in, I don't know how long her series is, about the dragons school and the war. I felt like a worse person for reading those. That is a romantasy. I don't know. I read both of those. I didn't do a review on this channel because I didn't want to have to talk about them anymore. Forever by Judy Blume, I think, is just a waste of time. It's gross. The fact that he names his dick Ralph is a personal affront to me. And it's just like the only reason that it exists is to try to slip sexual education into a fiction book to sneak it on people. So to sneak it past parents, which is dubious to me, but it's also like a 40, 50-year-old book. We've moved on past the information that's in that. But also, if you're trying to trick stuff into children past their parents, you're sketchy to me. Let's Talk About It, The Teen's Guide to Sex, Relationships, and Being a Human by Erica Moen and Matthew Nolan. Again, this is a terrible book. The illustrations are gross. The lessons, if you can call it that, are gross. It's filled with adults, millennials, older millennials, who are doing a hello, fellow kids, while thrusting vibrators into the hands of children. It's really disgusting to me. Teleshop USA by Stash Cairo, a disgusting book. I don't even know what to call it. It's a drama about a cheater at a TV station. The author is kind of a weirdo as well. I mean, incoming personal opinions here. He moved to Asia and has lived in Asia doing something with money for like the last 20 or 30 years, which also makes him come off sketchy to me. And then he has another book that was reviewed by Kirkus, and it's about a teenager musician where there's apparently a very long masturbation scene with this teenager thinking about her manager and BDSM in grotesque detail that is actually disturbing. And I'm just imagining, this boomer writing about a teenage girl flicking the bean and being beaten by her manager. I don't know. Kirkus called it uncomfortable, so I mean, you can look into it yourself if you really want to. Heather by G.C. Mackay. I would also say that that is literary fiction. It's a wannabe Lolita, but where the middle-aged incel man accuses Heather of being manipulative, and they have sex while she is on her period in front of a child and then rub the blood on the face of that 2-year-old that finds them at the park doing it. There's a review of it on this channel if you want to know all of the details. I just got a little sick in my mouth from that. The last book in the anti-recommends is a book called Motive Black, a novel by Adam Scott Huerta. And I'd say that the author needs to be punished for that dumpster fire, if not for the fact that I think that he would enjoy it. Behind the ridiculous attempt at pretentious prose that is attempting to hide the terrible idea written behind it is gibberish and strictly fetish material behind what this is claimed to be some visionary prediction of the future, where it simultaneously criticizes the corporations that are going to take over, and all of us are going to be enslaved by the corporations like Safe Google, Safe Domino's, and Safe everything else. Every brand you know about in today's day and age just adds safe, and that's in the book. But outside of this book that warns of the incoming corporation ruling of society, the author also uses generative AI, which, funny, is corporate power. But outside of that, the book also specifically focuses on the sexual fetishes of forced sissification, domination, rape / non-consensual, penis worship, white race worship, and breeding. That's as far as I got. I should have stopped when I got to like 5%, and I was like, I don't want to read this. When it was just the language and the forced sissification, which none of it made any sense, instead of having to read it, get further into the forced sissification, penis worship, white race worship, and breeding. And it goes heavy into the reading, where you've just got characters talking like robots about, I want you to put your penis in the vagina and to come. Did you enjoy to come? And that's where it continued just back and forth, repeating this with some dude named Oliver, after having been with the main character, who was one of the few natural people that may have had size M tatas, but he still had his born on him penis. So he hadn't been fully forced into sissification yet, even though he was partially sissified. The whole thing, I DNF'd it halfway because it was just porn language, and considering he was going to be underneath, was her name Anna? For a majority of the book until you get to the end when he fights off Google, pretty sure it's just going to continue with the fetish material. I am so sick of fetish material pretending that it is revolutionary to try to trick you into freaking reading it when it is just the author's barely disguised fetish, which try to convince me that this is anything but that. Also, it pretends that it's some story where corporatism and the LGBT are in charge of everything, and now it is illegal to just be a straight white male. It's almost like I've seen this story before. Yeah, it's hiding a generic idea behind its pretentious language, and it's gooner baiting, and the author should be punished for this trash. Go ahead. If you don't believe me, go ahead and go and try and read it. Don't be fooled by the 1,200 ratings on it. Most of them are 4 and 5 star. In fact, over 1,000 of them are 4 and 5 star. Looks pretty sketchy. Some of the 15 reviews out of that 1,280 ratings are repeats. So it looks pretty sketchy to me, almost like many of them were bought to try to astroturf some things. The book was recommended to me when I mentioned reading Incel, and no, they're not the same thing at all. Anyway, those are my recommendations and my anti-recommendations. Feel free to look into any of them as you please, but especially the ones that I actually recommend and not the anti-recommendations. Getting into stuff that's a little less on the creative side and a little more on the personal side, some of the great things that happened to me this year is that I actually got to go to a good friend's wedding over in the Baltimore, Maryland area. I am so honored that I got to go to this friend's wedding. I don't want to like dox her, so I'm not going to say. She can come into the comments if she watches this and decides she wants to say something. But I am so honored that I got to go to her wedding, and I am also incredibly honored that I've been able to become her friend. We met on YouTube a couple of years ago, and then found out that we lived close by, visited, have become great friends, and I hope that we get to stay friends until the end of time. I'm so looking forward to listening to her talk about her stories, to get to see her again in the new year. And I guess now it's this year since it's posted. So thank you so much for inviting me, for giving me that experience, and for being my friend. And because I was in Baltimore, I actually got to visit some of the locations that are in my Bodymore series. Now, I wasn't there for very long. I was only there for like a day and a half technically, because I flew in and then I left mid-Sunday. So I didn't have a lot of time, but I did get to go to 2 locations, and one is Leigh Park, which is a set piece in all of the Bodymore books. It's fairly important. I got to go to the Oreonda House, which is at Leigh Park, and that is specifically mentioned in, I know, Bodymore 1, because it is also, the Oreonda House is used as the gateway back into the real world. And then it is mentioned specifically in Bodymore 0, where Ralph actually goes into the Oreonda House near the end of the book, but the real Oreonda House on like the Baltimore side. I also got to visit my best friend Sam, and we'd been pushing it off and kind of procrastinating on setting up a time to visit. We've known each other since the late 2000s, and we met through writing on Gaia Online. We role-played in the same places for a while before realizing we were in the same places, and then we started collaborating together for our characters, and then we just started playing Left 4 Dead together, and it's just, we've been very close ever since. I first met him in person in 2012. He lived in the same place, and this was the first time that I actually got to go back to his hometown since 2012. Since before, it was he lived in a different place and I visited him in a different place, and he also has come to Florida a couple of times to visit me. And it was a much needed visit, to the point that I'm like, I need to try to prioritize like every year. I don't mind going up there. He doesn't have to come here to see me. I don't mind going up there specifically. But it's something that I was like, a much needed break and a much needed time to just see him in person. Even if like we did a lot of stuff, we did some glass melting and made some pendants. I can even show you the literal weapon he made me as his pendant. Here you go. I made him a couple of things as well, and I'll post a picture here. But he made this bean for me. You can't really see the colors. It's black and red. It's fairly large. It was an experience, and actually, I was very nervous about doing the fire torching, because fire kind of scares me because it's not controllable. But once we got started, and sans some of the other complications, it was really fun. And by the time we got to doing the second pendant, I was like, bro, I've got this. I want to do another, but we ran out of time. So that was... We also went to see some light show, or some Christmas decorations. What actually happened is, so we made the decision that I would come and visit like it was midway through November, near like a week before Thanksgiving. And I was like, okay, we're doing this. And I bought the ticket for that first week and a half of December, and it couldn't have worked out better. It was spur of the moment, but there kept being things to do. Like we went to a Scandinavian fest in the middle of nowhere. We rode a train there, and it was an experience. There were all sorts of winter markets that we went to on different days. There was the Christmas light show downtown, and we spent a lot of time watching Paranormal Caught on Camera and Ghost Adventures when we were at his house. And despite not living in the cold for, 10 years, because I've been living in Florida, it was really not that bad, and I really didn't mind. I also got to spend his birthday with him, which I feel like is something very important to me. So I'm glad that I forced it in to happen. Leading up to the visits, it had been a difficult year. We're gonna have a New Year's tradition at this point of like friends that I lose or things that change. Because I lost a couple of people this year that I personally very much cared about, very much respected. And some of it was just like being ghosted. And some of it was, I don't know, people just becoming belligerent and mean and having to cut stuff off. And it's like, it's not something that I enjoy seeing, but it's a part of feeling like I've been taking advantage of, and I've been used, and then having people laugh at me because they're like, "Yeah, you have been used, and yeah, you are stupid, and people take advantage of your stupidity." And it's like, I I don't know what I did to deserve the responses from certain people, and I know that I'm an idiot, okay? I say this every day. I understand it that I miss things, whatever. It doesn't make it hurt any less when you lose people that you care about, or when you're ghosted and it seems like people that you respect and people that you care about don't really think that you will care when they disappear, or that you don't think as much about them as you actually do. And I don't know, stuff just gets corrupted. People are so complicated, and you never know what people are going through. And so for the people that have decided to check out of my life, or if you're still kind of hanging back and sometimes you quietly watch in the darkness, I want to say I still think about you and I hope the best. And for some of you, I hope to hear from you again soon. I hope you haven't disappeared because you've lost hope. You've lost faith in yourself. That's one of the things that is like underpinned this year is there is just, I mean, every single year there's more depression and there's more black pilling and there's more just the end is nigh. Everything is useless. And I even felt that like a week ago. I was having another spiral of I should just delete everything. What is even the freaking point of doing anything? I feel like I'm always on my own, and I'm not the only one that feels that. It's very difficult, and we go through our our losses and the changes in our lives and the way that people treat us and the restrictions that happen that are out of our control, and then it changes the way that we think and the way that we interact, and we become bitter and caustic and angry, and then it makes other people bitter and caustic and angry. And it's so easy to begin to lose hope, to lose faith, to get negative, and then to start sowing those seeds of negativity and seeing everything in the worst possible light in a way that sort of inspires the way that um, Joey sees things as she starts becoming pessimistic. So if you read Bodymore 1 through 3 specifically, you'll see how Joey sees the world change. And then Ralph will explain why it is the way that it is for her and why she sees things differently than like Jag sees them. But it has to do with how pessimism corrupts the soul and darkens the soul. And then all that you see is negativity around you. And the more that you allow that pessimism to take over your heart, the worse everything seems. So at least that's something that was built into Bodymore. And I've seen it with friendships, and I've seen it be so easy to give up hope. And that's one of the reasons why later in this video, we're going to go over my art progress, because it's easier to see than like struggling through my writing stuff. But the important thing is to never give up hope. Another thing that I've had to do this year is I don't know if I feel like a bad person all the time by like having to cut people off or having to be defensive. But at this point, I'm not trying to mistreat anybody. But at this point, in like the last couple of months specifically, there have been people that just show up and they seem like they are trying to fight. And I don't know why. And if you continually engage with people that just want to be mean, that just want to talk down to you, that just want to be aggressive and insult you and assume the worst of you, then you're going to get more bitter and more bitter and more bitter, because all that these people are seeing around you is the negative stuff, and you don't have to put up with that. And I feel like a bad person for like, I never want somebody to be left out in the cold, because like I know what it's like to not really have anywhere to be. But at the same time, other people don't necessarily come to you with the same intentions that you start trying to talk to people with. There are people that come around you to try to take advantage, or to try to talk down, or to try to pull themselves up a ladder of some kind. You have to protect yourself, especially emotionally, because when those people take their emotional issues out on you, it will change how you see yourself. It'll change how you see the world, and you'll start to become more and more helpless, and it can change everything. And then you bring that negativity about yourself and your life that somebody else has about themselves and their lives, and you bring that to your friends and the people that you love, because you're so miserable from other people. And then you start infecting other people with that same thing. And it is so easy to just start spreading negativity, and only negativity. Anyway, there's been a lot of that this year. And just going back to my original point, if you were one of the friends that has sort of disappeared this year for whatever reason, I'm praying for you. I still think about you. There are a couple of you. And I hope to hear from at least some of you soon. Others, I think the door is closed. But I hope you know, if you're watching this, I hope you know who you are and that you are missed. I mean, technically, I think all of them are missed, but at some point, it's over. It's over. Something else leading up to the visit with Sam that I struggled with this year was this huge amount of depression, pain, and panic. It came on with the hurricane season, unfortunately, where there was all this pain in my lower back that then turned into severe sciatica, where I couldn't really stand, couldn't really sit, and I was nearly bedridden for 2 months, aside from, walking, because I had to stand up to get to work. But that was pretty much the extent of it. And that bedriddenness, where I couldn't even sit, had me not writing really, not drawing really. I couldn't play games. I couldn't really do a whole lot. And this turned into a very severe depression and a panic that became loss, like a fear of just losing everything. I don't want to get too much into it because obviously I'm already getting emotional about it and it's still very difficult for me to deal with. But the point being, stuff is generally okay. I am feeling better now, but take care of your health the best that you can, because your physical health will also affect your mental health. That's so obviously, like, generically stupid to say because it's so obvious. And like, if you've got sciatica, everybody is like, yeah, you're just gonna wait it out, just waiting out. But don't be surprised if you're in excessive pain, if your mood drops, or if you struggle emotionally. But also know that if you're struggling emotionally, it's okay to get help. It's okay to reach out for help. I had to specifically reach out for medical assistance because I got trapped in just never-ending grief for like weeks. And it was irrational, but I knew it was irrational. I could talk to the doctors and be like, it's irrational. I know, but I can't stop. So just know that if you're going through something, it's okay to confront it and to talk about it and to try to get back to where you can actually be functional, because then doing things will help you clear it up further. And the more that you do nothing, the worse it's going to get. Also, talk to the people that you love. They are so important, okay? You're never alone. Now, I mean, I say this, I have bouts where I'm like, I am absolutely alone, but I don't want anybody that I care about to think that they don't matter. So it's hard. Now we're on to the portion of this, which is going to go over my art from this year and do a couple of comparisons for where I started in December of 2022, some of the characters that I first drew in 2023, where we are now. And then I'm also going to introduce some of the characters that surfaced this year that eventually y'all are going to learn more about. And what I want you to remember as we go through this is that in order to develop a skill, you have to allow yourselves to be ugly. This kind of goes even back to doing the fire thing. So, okay, completely embarrassing, right? I mentioned this to my mother when I got back from my trip, and she was like, oh, me and your grandma have that too. And I'm like, oh, it's genetic. So as I was standing there, but you have to stand in front of the torch and just like have your glass in the fire and do the thing for a very long period of time, and you're pretty much standing still. Well, after about like 25, 30 minutes, I start feeling the sweat coming on. I feel the instant heat. I see the blackout vision. I'm gonna faint. I need the lady to come over and take the glass from me, because you can't take it out of the fire until it's done. And so I have to like emergency eject to sit on the ground before I pass out. And that does happen twice. She took that first stick from me. Well, I asked her to take the stick from me. And then I finished the first pendant. And then I sat down again after I finished the first pendant to get a break and some water before doing the second one. And point being, this comes in with, you have to struggle. You will struggle. Oh my gosh. That also goes into trying to figure out what the frick to do with this glass when you're... I want to do the pendants again though, because I know what I'm doing now. But you have to struggle, and it will look ugly, but you have to keep putting effort into it, even when it's ugly, and even when people might say that it is ugly, because it very well might be ugly. But the more public your thing is, the more that it sucks, So it can be really discouraging. But everybody here who is an artist of some kind, or, learning anything really, your language is going to struggle, your learning how to code is going to struggle, your learning whatever is going to struggle until it doesn't. Um, but it's okay for it to be ugly. I want to show the art specifically because it's a much more visual way to see how stuff moves than like my writing, because by the time my writing reaches somebody, it's fairly okay. It's mostly okay. It's gone, like, you're not getting the ugliest bits. You're probably getting some typos. You're probably going to find like a one or two incongruents that I missed by going through it a million times, but it is not the ugly way that it came out of me multiple times, because I sand that baby to heck to try to get it so that it's not the worst. But it's okay to struggle. And I know that so much of creating, whether it is visual arts or it is literary arts, is such a mind game where you work on stuff and you feel like a failure because what's coming out of you isn't what you imagined it to be, or you're struggling to put your story together. And then you just think, what am I even doing? Is it even worth this? Should I even be spending my time on this? Am I just a failure? Like, I am an idiot. And I go through this with every single project. And I have to remind myself, shut up. You can't see your project clearly until you're at copy edits. I couldn't see Bodymore Zero clearly until I got to copy edits. And I wondered if it was even worth it. I wondered if it was boring. But by the time I got to copy edits and was actually able to just start going through the story, instead of being like elbow deep in revisions and heavy editing and like looking at the mechanisms of it, like within it, once I was able to step back and look at it as a story, I was like, wow, the characters, the pacing, the visuals, I really like this. But when I was deep working on it, I couldn't see it. And I thought it was all ugly and it was all bad. And what am I doing? And then every so often I get what am I even freaking doing? What I'm doing is not important. Nobody cares. Nobody is ever going to care. I'm not rich enough. I'm not attractive enough. I'm not ever going to be anything enough. It's okay. We all go through this. And even if the thing doesn't look like the way that you want it to look right now, if it doesn't read the way that you want it to read, it will at some point. And that is what I want you to keep in mind as we look at my art. This is a visual representation of our journeys, okay? This was one of the, I wanted to bring chibis in here because I have some chibis in here that you'll see where they are at the moment. But this was my efforted chibis back in December of 2022 when I first picked up drawing again. I sketched a lot when I was a kid, a teenager, usually sitting, in classes or at church, and I would just doodle. I was never very good, but I enjoyed it. I never took any classes on it. I never studied anything, and so I just doodled. And so this was, and then it dropped off in 2012 when I graduated from college. And then I just more started working, and I went to graduate school, and I focused more on writing, and drawing sort of fell away. And I only sort of attempted to touch drawing again in like 2020, but it was so ugly and I just had no motivation to do it. And then I met Monty, and her drawing inspired me to start drawing again. And I'm really glad that I did. So this is where I started. And these are her characters, Jamie and Tens, from her Numina series, though their appearances may change as she develops her series. And this is just for, proof of where it all began. And then this was an image of Kitsuna, which is Katsuo's drag persona. And this was with my effort. This was not a zero effort image. This was an attempted effort. And then this was an image of Seth Graves, who belongs to my best friend Sam. And this was also an image of effort. I feel like I need to say that so that you know that it wasn't just me, like, I drew this for him for Christmas, This was the extent. If you looked at some of the other images, I don't have too many images from December of 2022, but if you look at them, you're like, that was the ceiling for my work. This was the beginning of 2023. So you can still see, like, it's not that far out. It's pretty much the quality that you might expect. So that was the start of 2023. And you just have to accept that it's ugly. My backgrounds I'm not working on backgrounds all that much right now. I'm trying to focus on understanding how to do characters and characterization right now. That's hard enough. Eventually I'll move on to backgrounds, and so we're lucky right now if I ever do backgrounds. These were then some of my chibis at the beginning of 2023. That was 2023. It might say 2024. That was 2023. Because that's when I was doing a lot of the drawing for Casey and Ralph. So you can already see in this comparison, these guys and these guys. Pretty stiff, pretty slim. Their eyes, they are what they are. Then we get into this, which is Katsuo. I have to share this one because I redrew him in this jacket, in this outfit earlier this month. So this is Katsuo wearing Daigo's outfit, okay? I drew this at the end of 2023. This was the redraw of the same outfit that I did earlier this month, and I did just a blue, did it a monochromatic, so it's just in blue, which is one of his colors. Orange is also his color. So there's the definition in the face and the hair that's different. This was one of the first images of Michi that I ever drew last year. It was March of 2023, and I didn't have really an idea of her character yet. I was still trying to discover what she actually looked like, and I remember drawing this while being, on a voice chat with some other people. This was then the next drawing of her that I did, trying to figure out who she was, what she looked like. So we're seeing her take more shape. This is one of the last images that I drew of her in 2023, in December of 2023. So already this is such a difference in not only personality, but in the body, in the shape, in figuring out who this character is. And then this is an image of Michi that I drew in mid this year. It was either May or June. I can't remember. It would say in the art video. But this is the difference of like 6 months. This is the first image of Marcella that I ever drew, and she was drawn in the summer of 2023. She was like right around the time that Sam came here for a visit, and that was in July, because she had like literally just been born around like shortly before Sam came here. So this was July. This was an image of her that I drew a couple months later, trying to figure out how to draw her also. If you look at these, if you look at a lot of my art especially, I'm trying to figure out proportions, and I'm trying, especially facial proportions, physical body proportions at the moment, how to draw freaking hair. I start working on stuff and I'm like, this is hard. I don't know how to draw this. I don't know how to draw freaking anything. But I keep experimenting with things to see how to work faces, how to work the shape of faces, how to start doing highlighting. And I change the way that I do highlighting and coloring to try to figure it out better. And specifically, the eyes keep changing because I'm trying to proportion the eyes better and better. And you'll kind of see that through my work as I go. This was one of the images of Marcella that I drew later part of last year, I think around September, maybe, that I was getting happier with the way that she looked. But I didn't feel like I was quite there, but I was starting to figure out how to draw her. Let me fix this. This is a weird proportion. There we go. I am sorry for having you had to look at that awkward proportioning. This was then one of the first images of Marcella that I drew this year. There are a couple of them if you watch the video of my art, but this was one of the first. Obviously, quite the major difference in these styles, though her eyes are still fairly large. But the lines are getting a little straighter. And then this was one of my, this is my so far best drawing that I have ever done of Marcella, and I'm extremely proud of it. I'm extremely proud of her expression, of the way that the hair looks. And that's a year apart. This is really a year from this. I mean, can you believe that? It's crazy to me. And she's developed so much, and I have developed being able to draw variations a bit more. Some variations a bit more. This was one of the first images of Billy that I drew. Not counting like the sketchies where I was just trying to get an idea out there, because there are some worse, but this is the first one that I did that it actually had effort put into it. that it wasn't just me trying to be like, okay, I want to get this out of my head to start forming the idea, but rather now let's start finding out what she truly looks like. So this was my first attempt at her. This was an image of Billy that came near the end. I think I think this is the last. So this Billy happened whenever the first week of Red Dead Redemption 2 happened, because I was immediately like, Annabelle. I see an Annabelle in my brain. I see a Billy and Ike. I see a Billy and Aces. They're coming. These are their color schemes. I have to draw them. So that happened probably like April, May. I'd have to look. This was one of the last drawings of Billy that I did last year. This was done probably in December, I think. This is the first image of Billy that I drew this year. So already you see you see some carryover, you see some differences happening with the eyes a little bit, with the nose a little bit, experimentation, proportions are questionable, but it's trying. It's trying. And then this is the image of Billy that I literally just worked on, finished ish before doing this video. I started this image like 2 days ago and worked on it yesterday. Maybe it was yesterday that I started it and I finished it today. So like that's a year and a half. And it's crazy. But if I didn't do the ugly, if I didn't struggle to just start working, experimenting, playing with it, allowing it to be what it needed to be, allowing myself to be proud of it wherever it was at and to keep moving forward, then I wouldn't be at this one on the right, which means where am I going to be a year from now? If this is the difference between a year and a half, where am I going to be next year? This is why it is so important that when you are writing or when you are drawing or when you're learning anything, to not be so critical of yourself that you get scared, that you stop doing. Because you never know where you're going to end up, and you might have something that you're proud of until you compare it to other things, and then you're like, oh my gosh, how is it so ugly? But you don't know what your potential is. You don't know where you can go, and you have to build those blocks and learn and grow as you go. Here is one of the first images of Ike that I drew that was attempting to figure him out. It took me a while to figure out what his hair looked like, but he's pretty steady now. And one of the other things that you'll notice, likely as the further we go through in any of these characters as they're drawn, is that their personalities, their characterization comes out so much more. Like, I would easily say, this is not Billy's characterization at all. Neither is this. This speaks to her so much. This does not speak to who Ike is. Ike is such a stinker. I cannot even begin to tell you how much of a stinker he is. And if you're curious about Marcella, Ike, and Billy, they're in the Westies. We're going to talk about them in a little bit, sort of, with next year's projects. This was one of the last images of Ike that I drew last year. It goes along with, I try to draw them in pairs sometimes, but it depends on what I'm focused on. But I drew those together to be buddies, obviously, because they're twins, so you're gonna get them. But that was one of the last images I drew of Ike last year. Still struggling to figure out his hair, and I can't draw his face. This was one of the images that I drew of Ike just a couple of months ago. Already such a huge difference in figuring it out. And this is one that I just finished, well, have been working on. Obviously, it's not finished because I'm still in the midst of working on it. But look at that characterization. I mean, his characterization in this one, too. There's less in this. He kind of is just a blank slate and with giant eyes. But, like, the characterization in his face here, and this characterization, bruh. He is such a little stinker. In the greatest way. He's a wonderful character. I'm so excited with him. He is if I may compliment myself very briefly, he is such a badass. But he is also such an asshole. But he is so charming. So I can't wait to introduce Ike to you guys, and I hope that he is as great for you as he is for me. Now, I just wanted to do a comparison for you guys as well of where the chibi art has gone, because we had the chibis at the very beginning of this. We also have this Billy that I was proud of last year when obviously I was still discovering her. So this isn't even accurate to her characterization either. And now this is where Billy is at. So a comparison. I should do this differently. Comparison. There we go. Then you have Ike from last year and Ike from now. or for more recently, he's still being a little stinker. But the proportions are better, the lines are stronger, but you don't get there by not being a dingus first. Now, getting through those, I'm going to introduce a couple of the newer characters that have popped up in art or have popped up in creativity and give you a brief introduction to them. First is going to be the aliens. Maybe you have seen the white-haired guys around a little bit, because I have been drawing them a little bit this year. Well, it might surprise you to find out that Malik and Khan were characters that I designed when I was 16. I will throw the original images up here on the screen. Yes, they were done during the angsting time. Can you tell? Can you tell they were done during my angst? But they never really had a story. I did design them. I drew them in, theoretically, a cast of characters that never came into anything because I wasn't really writing, and then they just sort of disappeared. Now, what happened was in January of this year, I was creatively struggling. This year has been horrendous with creative constipation. And so I was trying to break it. I didn't want to draw anything. I couldn't write anything. I was just like, ugh. And everything that came out looked like garbage. And so you know what I did? I opened one of my older folders with my older drawings and I was like, okay, let's draw Khan. And then I did. And then I really enjoyed drawing him. And then his personality started flooding into me. And his background started flooding into me. And all of a sudden, he's got this alien culture that totally fills everything that he's doing. And then Monty brings up this woman that she had created earlier this year for something completely unrelated. And then we start piecing together this group of them. So we've got Khan, who is the captain of this crew. I'm not going to speak too much on it, but we do have ideas for their cultures, but I'm not just going to like pitch their cultures at you. Just know they aliens. Khan understands emotions and emotional expression to be a manipulation that people do in order to get things. I should say emotional expressions are in order to get responses out of people. And so then he does expressions very broadly to get responses out of people. And then this is his little brother Malik, whom he rescues. And their eyes glow like this when they are analyzing, paying attention, paying close attention, and maybe considering you a threat. Their eyes kind of stop doing that when they are no longer looking at you as a threat. Now, I have to bring up this image as well, because this is magic to me. I've always, when I watch other people draw, it feels like magic. I love watching other people draw, whether it's online or it's in person, because I've had the privilege of being able to sit down beside Sam and watch him draw because he's a comic artist and just see stuff take form. And to me, like, I know that it is skill. I know that it is practice. I know that it is so much time spent into that thing, but watching it take shape is crazy to me, and I don't understand how it happens. And this is even with me. And I feel this way with my writing too. Like I mentioned earlier with Body More Zero, it was garbage until it wasn't. And then I'm like, how did I do that? How did I get here? And this is a visual representation of the same thing. So in July of this year, I started this image, which was meant to be like an eye close to the camera, a little bit of a fisheye image, from kind of above. That was the angle that I was going for to try to draw Khan. It's a disaster. I tried to redraw this so many times and I could not figure it out. So I stopped working on it and I just let it sit on my iPad. And near the end of the year, I like to go through whatever is just sitting in my main folder, because I have anything that I've been working on in that main folder, and I try to close out as many images as I can so that I can start fresh the next year. I don't know, it's arbitrary. It doesn't really matter, but I do try to like close things out. So I looked at this and I've looked at it for 5 months and I'm like, is there anything that I can do with this? Should I just delete this? That was the thought that came up yesterday. Can I do anything with this? It's been there. Do I even think that I can draw this? Because it is such a difficult angle. And it is so garbage. Like, it's embarrassing to look at, quite honestly. But I have it. You'll never imagine that I was standing in the shower while I was drawing on top of this. And this is how I ended up. I didn't draw this whole thing while I was in the shower. And I don't know how I was able to get from this to this. But that's 5 months. Somehow, my brain was able to do something like this, and I still don't know how. I mean, that's the same with like the Billy image. That is actually, I'm happy with it now. I wonder if I will be in two months, but this is where you're starting and where you're eventually going to be, and where I'm going to be after that, I don't know. So this is why I want to encourage you, no matter what you're working on, no matter how you feel about it, pursue to be stronger, pursue to strengthen your skills. Do everything that you can that feels like the things you need to do to strengthen your skill. And this isn't done yet. I'm still coloring it, but I wanted it for this video to show just like, what the frick? I don't know how I got there. And I'm sure other people will look at this and be like, yeah, it's garbage. That's okay. I am not this anymore. It was like that 2 days ago. Oh my gosh. Keep the hope. Now, this is another new character. We're completely jumping into something else now. This is another new character that came up this year. If you watched the video of the art from this year, you'll have seen this girl with the pink pants and the white shirt kind of change shape a couple of times because I've been trying to figure out how to draw her for a couple of months. This is Seneca. She goes by Sunny, and she theoretically should appear in Monty's Numina series. Not until later. She shouldn't come in until book 3 at the moment. That's the current thought. And what'll happen with her and in the story, you'll have to wait to find out, because I also have to wait to find out. But Seneca was my addition to Monty's Numina cast. Now, the next 2 characters are characters that tie into, hopefully, stuff that I will be working on next year with Sam. We have discussed for a while now working on another comic together, because Dirty Laundry has sort of been retired, and it's just like, we like working together. We want to work on something together. So we've been trying, and we've got so many characters and so many stories together that I've been like, Sam, I'm always working. Just tell me what you would like to work on. What would you be motivated to work on? And we are going to do it. And so then we selected these characters. Well, Max has been a character that Sam has had for a while. And then I was waiting for the inspiration to strike, and that is when we got Alistair St. Clair. So Max is here on the left. Alistair St. Clair is here on the right. Max is Sam's werewolf witch character. We've decided that it's going to be in New Orleans. Max gets targeted by some vampires, and they kind of wreck his life, so he wrecks them. And in their wrecking of his life, they actually end up killing Alistair, who is his boyfriend. And so Max uses his magic to resurrect Alistair. But also, all of this drama captures the attention of the vampire whose domain New Orleans is. And then Jean-Baptiste, who is that vampire, takes a very large interest in Max, because it's not very often that you run into a witch and a werepanther. And he's got plans. What are those plans? We're going to find out together. So I'll keep you updated on what we're going to do with that, but that's where these boys are. And that is the last of the art that I have to show. So again, if you want to follow along, if you want to see what the art is, how it progressed throughout the year. Previously been sharing like my art sort of weekly, at least a speed draw mostly, but then I kind of stopped because it was depressing to share. But I've wanted to share my journey so that people can see you don't automatically just get to someplace. So I've wanted to show maybe they are odd proportions. I mean, clearly they're odd proportions. Clearly there is a learning going on and they're not great, but I have wanted to share my journey so that people could see just what it looks like to be going through that process of learning, and that it's okay for stuff to be ugly, and it might be ugly, but you know what? It's an accomplishment. It's an accomplishment, and you can be proud of it at some point. Now, with that said, 2024 is at a close. We're going to get into 2025, hopefully be fairly quick about it. First off, I'm going to say some of the books that I know that I want to read. The first being A Ribbon of Sand by Mike Shannon, which I've already started. I know I'm disappointed that I don't have a book review for the first Thursday, but we needed to do this. Ribbon in the Sand should be coming, though. It's a book that I purchased. It came through the Fresh Meat feature in December of 2023. I purchased it immediately. I took forever to get to it, and I'm looking forward to talking about it. I'm also looking forward to reading Lauren Chambers' 2 other horror books that are currently out. I don't know if there's a 4th one yet. I have to go look for it, but The Dark Creator and The Dark Scientist. Considering how she starts out her books, I'm excited to see how The Dark Creator opens because her openings are strong. There was also a book that came up on my Goodreads page that doesn't come out until like March, I think, called The Buffalo Hunter Hunter, which is a horror by the guy that did The Mannequin. So I don't know what to feel about that because I did not like The Mannequin, but I'm giving him a chance. Because the story sounded interesting. I'm also going to be reading Werewolves Don't Die by Anton Trower. I still have to read The End of Alice, which somebody suggested to go along with all the pedo books that I was reading last year, so... There is Crew of Exiles by Neil Holschult, which was something submitted to the Fresh Meat feature that I thought I would like that. And I'm also going to read the other 2 Stuart Turton books that are from the same author that did the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I'm looking forward to those because I really liked that author and I can't wait to see what more he does. So there are obviously going to be many more books than that, but those are some of the immediate ones that I know I'm going to read, that I am looking forward to reading, and we'll see where it goes from there, because it's not like I don't have a stack. These are just like at the top of my brain stack for what I want to be doing right now. Another thing that I need to mention when it comes to the books of next year is author recommendations. So previously, I have had just open recommendations. And so if anybody sent something to like the suggest a topic down below, or emailed me, or messaged me somewhere, I would consider or add their book to my to read stack. Often it wasn't just a consider, especially if they were personable. Like I've had some that just kind of pitched like it was a sales, and I was like, if you're going to just talk to me as a customer and not as a person, I'm not interested. But I've generally had an open mind to submissions, to authors recommending their own books to be read, because I know how difficult it is to get people to read your book, to talk about your book, and especially without spending money. And I don't want to take that away because of how difficult it is. However, with the amount of times that I've had some negative experiences with authors this last year, I'm going to change it a little bit. So if you want your book read here on the channel, 1, I'm going to limit the book recommendations to summer. I don't know how many months in summer. It might be all of summer. It might be June and July. It might be May, June and July. I don't know yet. But it might be June and July, and then I can sporadically pick from there at other times if I want to just randomly pick one. However, I'm going to put a submission form on the Discord. If you're an indie author, you have to join the Discord so that at least I can know you and not be like a stranger that just pops into my DMs, to hopefully give some level of like protection. I mean, there were some in the server that did not like the fact that I didn't like their book, that still were upset that I talked about their book after they asked me to read it. But still a little extra form of protection. So I'm not taking that away entirely. If you want to recommend to me that I read one of your books, try to see what I like and see if it's going to fit into that. If it is literally something that you think I'm going to be disgusted with, please do not ask me to read it. The other thing is prepare yourself accordingly. Watch my reviews, see how I talk about books. I just say what I like or if I don't like things, and then why that is, and I go through it entirely to form a discussion. So prepare yourself for the long reviews, or long book discussions, whether it is positive or negative. And then if you want to submit, I'm going to have a place on the Discord for submissions, and I will pick books from that submission thread. And they don't have to be your books. If there are books that you are interested in me reading, not just your books, but just books in general that you're interested in getting my opinion on, you can put those in there too. If you've previously submitted books that you've requested that I read, but you did it in the submit a topic thing, I've taken those names and I'm going to stick those in the recommendations as well, just by default. So you don't have to worry about those. There was like a zombie book. There was a supernatural romance series in there. There was like 1 or 2 other books. One of them's fantasy. Anyway, those are going to be in there. So if you want your book to possibly be read, that is going to be the way to do it, not by DMing me specifically. Come talk to people, be a decent person. Hopefully, maybe. It's always questionable when asking more people if they come hang out in the Discord, because then you get some questionable folks. So there's that. If you have any questions about that, feel free to leave comments down below. Getting into my goals for next year, Westie's one, it does not have a title yet. We're going to be working on that title, is theoretically aiming for November of release next year. It is at over 90,000 words right now in the first draft. The second draft should go fairly quicker. I'm looking forward to revision of that book. It is going to be a lot of fun. It is westerny. It does westerny. It is westerny. It's going to have 3 main books that follow the main cast, and then a prequel, which is Bill Cassidy himself. The series is called The Legend of Bill Cassidy. The legend is his children and seeing what's happened with his legacy. Another thing, as I've just said, is going to be the comic with Sam, which we're going to be thinking of a name. We're going to be picking a deadline as soon as the holidays are over. Everybody's been busy. Predisposed to Bliss is currently at 40K. I need to actually just start writing it linearly so I can figure out better how it needs to lay out, because I've been bouncing around and I've been struggling to get it focused. I know, how is it at 40K and not focused? Because I have some ideas, but not enough to build into the correct direction. So I'll be working on that. Predisposed to Bliss will be coming whenever it comes. That is a book that I'm like, it's going to get me in trouble. It's a book that it is inspired by a book I read in 2023, that it was inspired by some of the conversations. And it's a book that contains some conversations and ideas and situations that I don't know how to have in any other way. So I'm presenting it in this character. And it's a book that's going to get me in trouble, that's for sure. Yeah, I think those are all of the updates that I need currently. I'm obviously going to continue drawing. Hopefully I will continue to get better. Hopefully I'll get somewhere decent this year. I don't know. The final things that I want to leave you with is the most important thing that you can do for anything that you want done is to show up to see the work is done. I have to remind myself of this constantly when it comes to like writing a first draft or writing a draft period, because I'm like, it feels like a mountain. But if you show up every day, get those words in, you're going to be progressively moving through your story. And I've been reminding myself of this literally all week as I sit down and write about 1,700 words or more. And every day I'm further in, and 2 days and a chapter is gone. 3 days, 4 days, 2 chapters have passed, and it's slowly and then quickly you're to the end. And it's all you have to do is show up. Show up, do the work, it'll get done. Make choices every day, the best that you can, to make the future that you want to see, whether that is with your writing or drawing or making music or learning language or whatever your goals are. Only you can plant the seeds that are going to grow underneath you. And it includes positivity. If you sow negativity, you'll grow negativity. So also try to be positive where you can. Remember, people can't take your hope. Hope is only something that you can give up. Now, my tips for the new year for pretty much anybody are read. You learn so much in so many ways. You read so much in so many ways. Read closely, make lists, get recommendations, read along with, what I read along here so that you can get an idea of yourself and then come and join the conversation, Look how to annotate. Look for the styles that you want to emulate. Try to learn. That's the best thing that you can do. If you have questions on how stuff is done or the variation of stuff, there are all of the theory books, there are all of the craft books, but they've got nothing on seeing how it is done successfully, because rules or suggestions can only go so far, and it doesn't account for what it actually looks like in person. Listen more. Try to slow down in conversation to hear what other people are saying, as opposed to responding before they have even said their piece. There is so much just like preparing to say your thing before the other person has stopped talking that it's amazing that it's not surprising that there are so many communication issues when so many people prepare what they're going to say before a response is even given. Don't worry about monetizing everything. Find things that you want to do and like for you, not because it can make you money. Don't be obsessed with making money. And let me tell you, one of the worst things that you can do to pitch your stuff to me is be obsessive about the money. I'm not saying that you don't have to want money. I would love to be able to make money off of YouTube or off of my books. I don't make hardly anything on my books, and I really don't make much on YouTube to put up for all the time, to make up for all the time that I spend recording and editing. However, passions. I have a day job to subsidize the rest of this. I cannot tell you how insulting it is, and I've had it said to my face where people go, oh no, I'm writing for the money and obsessing about the money and telling me, oh, well, it's great that you can write for passion and art, but some of us have bills to pay. As if the rest of us are not making sacrifices too. That is beyond insulting. Try to find ways and things to do that are not just monetization, because that will also drag your soul out. It'll put this pressure on you that doesn't need to be there. And it frankly separates you from other people who are just there, and it frankly separates you from people who are not just money-driven creators. In fact, you're probably not going to fit in with people who are not money-centered creators if you are a money-centered creator. My next tip for the new year is choose to be grateful, choose to be happy, choose hope where you can, and choose to look on the bright side, and it will change the way that you feel. I'm not saying that it will fix everything. Obviously, you don't have that much control over all of your emotions, but do the best that you can. And fight against the negative urges that tell you that it all is hopeless. It will get better. You kind of just have to work through the storm of the negative stuff. Also, expect that I am going to upset or disagree with you at some point if I haven't already. We're different people, and it's okay to disagree. It doesn't mean anybody is evil or wrong or whatever. It's just going to happen. Also, expect pirates in Hawaii in February. It's coming, you guys. Now, with that said, this video is long enough. I hope you are feeling pumped for the new year. So now I want to hear, what are some of the goals that you know of yourself right now? That's not saying they won't change as we go forward, but tell me what's on your mind. What do you want to accomplish this year specifically? I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts. With that said, have a great week. Happy New Year, and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out?
The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross.
Is he in trouble?
We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him.
Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Why? Did you do that? To the left. Plain black letters read along the wall, "You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right." My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?